What are some questions that you should ask someone before getting into a very serious relationship?
You want to come at it of like, here, I need to check all these boxes in date one, because you don't even know if there's a connection there. Again, what do they want in the next 5-10 years of their life? And do your goals even come close to each other? The hard thing with asking direct questions, again, when someone's on a date, they're going to tell you in a positive way.
How do you increase self-awareness?
I mean, therapy, reading, journaling.
Go to therapy, guys. Go to therapy.
Just pay attention. How are people receiving me? How am I showing up in conversations? Do I dominate? Be willing to ask questions about yourself and be curious about what's happening for you, but then also of like, why have I not asked them about them?
Another thing that I want to talk about is, like personal trust issues.
If you're in a relationship and you always feel insecure, yes, there's some internal work that needs to take place, but also are they exhibiting behaviors that leads you to feel that way? It feels good to be supported. It feels good to be loved, but your baseline is already needs to be that without them.
All right, Crystal, thank you so much for being here today. And I want to talk about your anniversary. I saw that you made a post that you were like 15 years, the way that I say it so weird, you were like 15 years into marriage.
Yes.
But congratulations.
Thank you.
What was that experience like on that day, just realizing, oh my God, it's been 15 years?
Well, we kind of celebrated the weekend before, so it wasn't anything special necessarily on the actual day, but yeah, so I mean, it feels like an awesome.
You like went out of town, right?
Well, we just did like our kids had sports stuff like both weekends surrounding, and so we just did like an overnight stay at the Lowe's and went to a concert and dinner, and
that's fun.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, now that you've been in a marriage for 15 years. What is one thing that you can tell us as newlywed? I'm like newlywed-ish.
Sure.
I honestly don't know how I end up getting married, but but yeah, what do you have to tell us that are somewhat new or like new?
Yeah, so there's some language that we learned when we went through premarital counseling that we've kind of done every year, and I actually incorporated it when I do couples counseling as well. And so there's 3 different concepts. So one is called the daily diversion, the weekly withdrawal, and the annual abandon. So the daily diversion is where every day you take about 10 to 15 minutes to do like a touch base on more than just like, how was your day? But like, was there anything hard that happened today? Was there anything really exciting that happened today? And it's like a real brief window of just connecting more than just like, oh yeah, I had a good day. Hope you did too. And then the weekly withdrawal is where you try to focus on an extended version of that, where it's a date night or just over dinner to where the conversation goes a little bit deeper than, again, kind of the surface level. And then the annual abandon is where, and typically around an anniversary, is you take a trip or an extended couple of days and you do a recap of what went really well this past year and what are our highlights, like what are our favorite memories, what are some of the things that we enjoyed doing, and then what are we looking forward to in the next one, and set some goals of like, here's the trips we want to go on, here's some fun things we want to do, and then you go on, okay, what didn't go so well this past year? Where did communication break down? What were repetitive conflicts that we had? Where were places that we disengaged? And then how can you apply that to the next year and try to stay on top of some of those things? And what's really nice about that conversation is it doesn't allow things to build for too long, because you're going to circle back to the hard things every year. Wow. So like, how did you, like come to this, trees, do you call it 3 steps or is it 3 processes? Yeah, it's just some language around kind of just communication and, more than just the touch base people do.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially the daily diversion. I like that because, even though I don't use the same language, that's something that I like to do. I don't like small talks at all.
Yeah.
And, sometimes when I come home, my wife, would want to talk about things really fast, and I'm just like, no, my mind is still engaging. Let me just decompose and de-stress, and then we can talk about it. So we'll have a whole conversation about what happened in my day, what happened in her day, and then try to see whether there is anything that I can do to help her or like vice versa.
Yeah.
But how did you come up with this language in your own marriage? And you said something that you like talk to your patients now.
Yeah. So when we went through premarital classes prior to getting married, that was something that they taught us. And so that was through our church back then and our mentors. And we had a mentor couple. And so then it's something that, I've just incorporated because it works.
Especially in the weekly withdrawal.
Yeah. And we're not super great at always doing a date night every week, but at least there's an extended period of time that we're like, okay, let's sit down and let's, talk about the week or things coming up. Right. But the annual abandon, and to be honest, like there are years where I was like, oh, this conversation is going to be a little bit harder than last year.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
And you can have a little bit of anxiety because it's like, I know I have things to say. What is he going to say?
Right.
But I think it's good because so many relationships, it's not like all of a sudden it's just over. Like it's a slow thing that happens over time. And when you plan for those hard conversations, and obviously they should happen more than just once a year, but it allows that outlet. And so when you plan for it, things don't have that opportunity to build like they could because it's easier to avoid.
Right. No, it's like I even in my past, like relationships, and I also made a video talking about communication on the internet, and I had a few questions that I want to get into, but it's like in my past, like relationships, after going to therapy, I learned that I was the problem. I wasn't communicating, which had everything to do with my past, how I was grew up. I tend to shut off whenever I sense like friction. And I would rather just not deal with it because it's like why bother? Like this is not what I want to do in a relationship, and I don't like friction at all. So that's why I make it a daily thing to try to communicate as much as I can, but do it like intentionally, where we're sitting 1-to-1 and having a conversation. So I genuinely like this. But before we go into a question, tell me a little bit about the annual abandon. Just the name itself. Are you do you annually abandon things? Is that like just the name suggests?
Yeah. So generally, like you can have a trip around it, and we normally do, but this year it just didn't work out that way. And so so you like. It's just like either a vacation with just the couple or like a weekend. And if financially that doesn't make sense, it's just that you take an extended period of time, more than just a date night, and you connect. And that's when you have kind of lengthier conversations about reviewing the year, looking forward to the next year. And also like, when you get married, sometimes you're like, oh, we have these lofty goals for our lives. And then as you grow, again, we just got to 15 years and it's like our goals look significantly different than they did when we first started. And so every year it's like, is there something different that we're wanting to move towards? Is there something we've left that no longer works for us or whatever? Wow. And it's just an extended period of time.
So like, how much does trust play in these three different processes that you guys have? Because I know you have to have a significant amount of trust to be able to even have these conversations on a daily, weekly withdrawal, and also annual, which is like an annual review on your relationship.
Yeah, it does play a part. And I think part of it is just making sure that if someone is giving critique or feedback, you're doing it in a respectful and civil way. But then also when you're receiving it, you hear it, and you're not just like, oh, let me quick to defend myself. Let me quick to rationalize why this. And I know like, a lot of the times, and not to throw my husband under the bus, but I come with a lot. I'm saying like, so and so, but his response has always been positive. And he's always like, oh, I didn't know that you felt that way, saw it that way, perceived it that way. And it's never been this like, I need to justify, defend, I need to get in front of this, whether it's to save face or protect ego, but it's always like, oh, wow, okay, this seems really big, let's apply. And even if like there's not even full agreement or just kind of laying down and taking it, it's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was like seen this way. What's a better way to go about doing this? And then we kind of brainstorm together.
So how can one hold space like that? Because this is something that I need to know.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like, you don't feel at threat, which, he grew up a pretty privileged life. And so trauma's never been really a part of his story. And when it is part of your story, it is harder because you go into self-protection mode. Right. And so he has a pretty good baseline of confidence. And so he doesn't feel at threat if I come and say like, hey, this didn't land well.
Right. So like, how can someone learn to hold space? Let's say they went through, like a significant amount of trauma, and now they always feel the need. And I'm talking about myself. Okay?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
how can one hold space without feeling the need to defend?
Yeah. Well, I think that's your own internal work that you do. And so when you work on becoming more confident, being able to hear critique and not feeling like you're, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I guess, under attack.
Right.
And so when you can be like, okay, there's something that's big that this other person is trying to communicate to me, and I don't need to be in self-protection mode, as long as, again, they're not coming at it in a rude or awful way, right? And so it's like you do your own internal work, which then increases your confidence and ability to hear criticism.
Right.
And that then enhances the relationship, because a lot of the times communication breaks down when people react towards each other.
Wow, that's powerful. And in this example, I excel at, not taking anything on a professional level, but on a personal level, I suck at it. Is there something there that I'm missing? Because and then another example is like, especially on a personal level, my dad is visiting right now. It's been a mess. Like, it took me 3 days to call. And when I called him, my entire personality changed. I was kind of embarrassed of myself because I had all this, like, I'm going to be this and this and this. And then the moment he said hello and I heard his voice, something happened in my brain. I felt like I went back to the fanboy kid. I was like, hi, how are you? How are you doing? How was your trip? And I remember saying, I'm not going to be that kid. I have things that I want to talk to him about. We need to talk. But for some reason, I can't. And then I started stuttering too. And I was like, what is happening? So is there something happening to me on a personal level where I can translate what I do on a professional level?
Well, I think it starts with even your language around it. Like, I heard you say, I can do it great in a professional sense, but I can't at all in a personal sense. And so you're already setting yourself up for failure when you say it that way. And so it's, if you can do it professionally, you can also do it personally. And I think we've even talked about that before. And so it's, if you can do it in one area, you can do it in another. So you need to start
to our conversation.
Yeah, you need to start telling yourself that. And then if there's still things that are coming up with him, then there's still something that needs to be undone as it relates to your own processing with it.
Yeah, because I suck at, I think the catalyst is my mom. Because my mom is very adamant on me having a good relationship with him. So even though it's coming from a good intention on her part, but the way she delivers it, it's like I am at fault all the time. It's always like, you need to call him, you need to do this, you need to do this. He's your dad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what about the way I feel?
Sure.
But she's like, well, life's short. I'm just like, yeah, I know. But like, these are things that I feel right now. So I feel like the pressure that I feel from my mom also makes it difficult for me to have a voice. For example, the confident piece that you mentioned, it's like, how do I make sure that I can have at least my mom's support so that I can be like, yeah, this is what happened. But that doesn't, is that something that I also need to figure out a way to communicate with my mom? Yeah. I'm very close to my mom. Like, we have a great relationship. So me and her, I felt like we were a team when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Even though she has 7 other kids, but me and her, we were very close. So when she asks me to do something, I tend to just like, all right, let's just do it. Because it's my mom,
Yeah. So what you're doing there is you're not allowing tension between the two of you, but you're allowing internal tension with you because of the conflict with your dad.
Wow.
And so it's okay, which one are you willing to live with? Are you willing to say like, no, Mom, I don't think I'm going to call him today because I'm just not in the headspace for it. And then she gets upset. Are you okay with that? If you're not okay with her getting upset, then you are like, okay, Mom, I hear you. And then you figure out a boundary within yourself in the conversation with your dad.
Right. Wow. That's hard. It's like doing calculus in my head. I'm trying to just find the ways to go about balancing it.
Yeah.
Okay. So like someone going through all of this, and how does that reflect in a relationship? In my case, it's communication, which I'm being mindful of it. That's why I try to have as much conversation, and I try to notice when I shut off, and I'm be like, okay, I'm shutting off. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
And especially with my wife, because that's very important. I try to make sure I don't bring this what I experienced as a kid into my marriage. But as a therapist, what other ways do you see that play out in like relationships? Yeah.
So Brene Brown has a great statement that I love. She says that if you're talking in your relationship, and you're making assumptions, she goes to what you need to say is the story that I'm making up in my head is, and then go into it. Because a lot of the times when you say it that way, then the person is like, oh no, that's not what I meant at all. But if you come at it from like, this is what I heard you say, they can go quickly on the defense. But if you say the story that I'm making up in my head is this,
I like that.
then you're owning that like you could be twisting what's happening, but you're not meaning to. And it's just the way you're hearing or interpreting it.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So I would use that language for sure.
Yeah, I'm definitely using that because I'm a very visual person. I can visualize things in my head. And when I visualize the opposite, it's very bizarre. I'm like, way too far. So thank you for that too.
Yeah, and then that also gives the other person an ability to correct. So if you say that, then they can speak into it and be like, oh no, this is what I meant. And then you have clarification, which then takes away from the assuming. And generally we assume negative.
Yeah, I know. Well, enough of us now. So back now to my question. The first one that I want to talk about is, someone says, what are some questions that you should ask someone before getting into a very serious relationship? As a therapist, what would you recommend to be maybe top 5 or top 10 questions?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to do like just listing out the questions, but I think there are categories. And also, I think it should be over time as you get to know someone, because you don't want to come at it of like, here, I need to check all these boxes in date 1, because you don't even know if there's a connection there. But I think one thing in general is as you're talking and getting to know someone, watch and observe how they treat other people. And if you notice that they're treating other people in a restaurant disrespectfully, or a waitress or a waiter, or they don't tip at all, or how they open or allow doors to close on people. Like all of those things reflect, I think, people's character that they don't know to watch for on date 1 and 2.
Right.
A lot of the times people can be on their best behavior, but then you notice how they treat other people, and then also notice how do they talk about other people. Is it always negative? Is it never their problem? Is it never their fault? Like those are all character pink flags that you should be thinking about when you're listening to someone.
Right.
So that's kind of one thing I wanted to say. And then the categories I think are, again, what do they want in the next 5-10 years of their life? And do your goals even come close to each other? Do they want a family? Do they want to stay in the same area where they are currently? Do they want to move? And then like what did their childhood like? Was it hard? Was it good? Was it a mixture of hard and good? Have they processed it? Have they not? What's the relationship like with their family, their siblings, parents, extended family? What do their friendships look like? Do they have any? Are they close? Are they long lasting? Because the hard thing with asking direct questions, again, when someone's on a date, they're going to tell you in a positive way, right? And so I'm not going to put myself and be like, here's all my flaws right from the very beginning. And so you have to just learn in communication how to pick up on, are there themes to where I'm like, oh, I hear them talking about this friend and this friend and this family member. And like, there's always issues with those people. Why is that? Right. And who's the common denominator?
So I had an opposite back in my dating years. I watch you overshare like all the craziest stories just to kind of, because I stayed single for so long because I'm like, I don't want to like do this whole dating crap, and because it's just exhausting. You get someone, you get to know them, you open up, and then eventually they leave.
Sure.
So I started just letting everything on the table, and it's like I started getting the attention that I didn't want, because now everybody was, oh, I want to save this guy.
Oh yeah, that's not good.
And I was like, oh, okay, so there's oversharing. Also, it's not the greatest. But let's say someone who has all this baggage and going into a relationship, how do you make sure that you don't bring all of that into that? Because I think that's very important. It's very common today. People get into a relationship, they don't even know the other person's family until 2 years of getting into it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, that's just why therapy and counseling is so important, is because that is all the individual's work. It is not your partner or future partner's responsibility to help, fix, heal any of that with you.
Right. Yeah. I need to remember that myself.
And again, they're a great asset, right? It feels good to be supported. It feels good to be loved, but your baseline is already needs to be that without them.
Right. Yeah. And then another thing that I noticed, this is in my past, I was dating someone. This was, my wife's not gonna want to hear this at all. This was a long time ago, back in the medieval times. I was dating someone where I had to hold space for them the whole time. So I felt like I became like this, box for them where they can go and always like unleash and share everything. And then it was like, but I also have stuff that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
And it became so draining. But I kind of held myself accountable because I'm the one who set that expectation for her. I became that, where she just comes, I'm just like, okay. And then I'll always have something good to say because that's just me. And then maybe me even saying that's just me. Also, I'm setting myself for failure as well. But then I felt that the whole relationship was very one-sided. But like, how can someone, if they happen to find themselves in that position, what can they do at that moment to make sure that that doesn't become, a one-sided thing where the relationship is just all about you listening and not being heard?
Yeah, I think just state it and just say like, and again, there are like different seasons that people go in where someone's in more high need than others, right? And so you might feel that you're doing more listening, but what you're describing is that like you need to be able to say, like, I love being a support to you. I love listening to you, but sometimes it feels like we get through all of your stuff and there's no time to get to mine, and it feels one-sided. And then see how they receive that. Like, or do they feel like you're now putting them down because they have a lot of quote unquote issues or whatever. And it's like, do they be like, oh my gosh, that's not what I intended, please share. And if they're open, then you begin to slowly shift that dynamic.
Right.
If you try that and it's constantly moved back to like, oh, well, this is what I'm dealing with, or, oh, this is what I have going on, might not be the right fit because it sounds like they got a lot. And if they won't allow room for you and you're now communicating it multiple times and trying to make efforts and there's nothing changing, it probably won't be any different a year later.
Man, that's hard. That's really hard to hear. So let's say now this person, now they're the one who's always dumping stuff on their partner without realizing that. Maybe just ask them, how's your day? And instead of just yapping and then just moving on and going to, oh, I feel good. Thank God I have someone who listens to me. But like, what can you do if you are the person who's just sharing nonstop and not asking?
Yeah, I think that goes to levels of self-awareness. And for someone to be able to recognize like, oh, I just spent the last hour unloading and I didn't ask them how they were doing at all. I should probably do that. Right. And so I think increase self-awareness and then just be curious. Like if you're talking a lot and you recognize that the other person isn't, why is that?
Wait, so how do you increase self-awareness?
Therapy, reading, journaling.
Go to therapy, guys. Go to therapy.
But yeah, it's just like, I know I've heard people say like, I don't really have an inner dialogue. And I'm like, wow, that is so fascinating to me. But like if you're not one that thinks often inside your head, then use a journal or a notebook or a computer or your phone or something to just kind of sort out and just pay attention. How are people receiving me? How am I showing up in conversations? Do I dominate?
Right.
Just, be willing to ask questions about yourself and be curious about what's happening for you, but then also of like, why have I not asked them about them?
Right. Yeah. That was probably the hardest like relationship that I've been in because I felt like now I have to be there for this person because, maybe this was my own ego. After talking, I can see that they have all this relief. And I'm like, oh my God, right? Yeah, I'm actually really good at this shit. I was like, I should become a therapist. but yeah, so another thing that I want to talk about is, like personal trust issues. And so someone made a very long comment, but I'm going to try to summarize it. They said you realize that there are personal trust issues that stem from something much deeper, such as your own insecurities, which was kind of touched on here. What you also need to realize is that your own insecurities are not a reflection of your so-called relationship. I don't know whether this is a comment, whether this is a statement. Okay, so this is more of a statement. But let me find the question in the statement so that we can talk about it. Okay, so this said, in some ways, it's making a decision despite your pride. Is this really a good thing? Or are we just trying to satisfy our ego and say that we have a trust? We are trusting to one another. Like, what do you think about that? It's a very confusing question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I guess maybe to the insecurity part is if you're in a relationship and you always feel insecure, yes, there's some internal work that needs to take place, but also are they exhibiting behaviors that leads you to feel that way? So like, are they looking at other people when you're out in public and they're very visible about looking at other people? Do they make comments about other people in front of you? Do you hear them have side conversations with their friends that are very, I don't know, just about other people? And so
Just
it's like,
insensitive.
And so it's like, okay, that can increase insecurity. Are they like very defensive of their like phone or computer? Are they very protective? And so just like some of these hidden things that is like, okay, should I be worried about something here? And I think whether you have trust issues or not, behaviors can increase insecurities based on how someone's treating you.
That's true. And then like speaking of trust, another question, it was like how to bring up issues in relationships without issuing ultimatums. And then this one has actually a question. It says, a question that I have is somewhat, people need to go to study English. I'm sorry. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, let me try to understand what she's trying to write. I've realized that I have a pattern of inability to talk to whomever I am dating about issues without getting the urge to break up. Oh yeah, we like touched on this in the beginning before we even start recording.
Yeah, I think it all has to do with self-protection. And then also like, we really like black and white thinking, or another term for it is all or nothing thinking. And it's like, life does not work that way.
Right.
Like there are some issues that are very cut and dry, but a lot of the times we have to get comfortable in the gray.
Right.
We have to be able to say like, this is uncomfortable, but we need to talk about this because I know that on the other side of it, whether it's a breakup or not, there's clarity there. Because living in the unknown is anxiety producing.
Right. So what, define the gray. How does the gray look like? Since you mentioned it's not a black and white, like how can someone identify, okay, well, I am in the gray. What do I do?
Yeah. So being in the gray is being willing to say like, oh, we might disagree on this, but that doesn't mean that this disagreement needs to end in a breakup or a separation. And so if it's something that's like safety related, something big, yes. But if it's like, we like these two different things, or we're in conflict over how we think about these particular things, it's like, can you be okay with you having differences in that? Because when you bring two humans together, they're going to be different. You can't always be aligned on every single thing. Like that's unrealistic.
Right. And, since we're talking about alignment, this is something that, the comments all from TikTok. TikTok can be very political and very social focused. And there's a whole trend of people leaving their partner because they voted different. Like, why do you think that that's such a huge trend right now? And I have my own opinion about it, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is just so polarized right now, and it goes back to if you go this way, then this must mean you are this type of person. And I think those are huge overgeneralizations. And it's like, okay, if you're different politically, are you still able to come together and say like, I can still respect where you are landing on this particular issue? And if you can't, then I would go to self-reflection as to why. Like this country is made up of so many different things and so many different issues, and people are going to land in on a very left side, on a very right side, and everywhere in between.
Right.
And we should be able to have conversations with each other and be like, oh, okay, I hear your point. I don't agree, but like, doesn't mean that we can't have a civil conversation about it.
Right. And like, why do you think people have such a need to even share that publicly? Because the moment you put that on the in the internet, you're opening yourself to so much. And some of these videos will have millions of views and comments and hundreds of thousands of, and usually it's all one-sided. And I know the algorithm plays a big part.
Sure.
Just keep validating whatever your biases are.
Yeah.
But why do you think people feel the need to do that? Because I know social media, they try to sell the whole concept of community, but people find a community, and I think it's very unhealthy because you are just in this echo chamber just talking, and everyone is saying, yeah, we agree. But on a personal level, why do people feel the need to put themselves in that position? Because it's risky.
I think it adds the feeling of I have more power in the situation. So if I post a thing and there's like 100 people who agree with me and 2 people who don't, I can then go back to this person and be like, look, I made this public and there's 100 people that agree with me. And it's like, I now have power because I now took this and now look at all my backing. And so then they feel validated, they feel justified. And I agree with you. I don't think that is healthy.
And like, what's the cost to that, to that couple, them, for one person trying to seek that validation, that power, and then getting that? Now, what's the cost on that relationship? Yeah,
because you're proving that you need to be right over understanding and connecting with the other person.
Wow.
So your need to be right trumps it.
Right. So like, how can they establish connection after they go through all this, and now they're trying to figure out, you know what, I actually like this person. I want to stick with them. Even though the whole internet is telling me that he or she sucks, and that I am powerful and I should not listen to this person. But like, how, if they want to establish that connection, how can they just salvage that?
Well, I mean, I think it would probably happen before the post, right? Because I think it adds to like, oh, here's all the reasons why I should break up with you, right? And all these people tell me I should. But I think if they were to come to you and be like, oh, this seems kind of unfair or one-sided, and they had some level of rationalization, then it's like, oh, wait, this isn't a public issue. Like, this is a conversation that needs to happen between the two of us.
Right.
And like, why am I making or breaking my relationship on something that's at a societal level that I don't even have control over?
Right.
Like,
yeah, that's
that is crazy to me.
No, yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that, because I shared a TikTok video, and I noticed a few people were very adamant about that belief, and I try not to stick in. I try to confuse the algorithm, because I used to be part of the system that built the algorithm, so I think I have a somewhat understanding of it, because it keeps adapting every year and every day actually. But one of the things that I try to do is like I would share like very like provocative things that. When I have like a group of people that are like all agreeing with what I say, I go and read all the comments, and I'm saying, no, that's not what I'm saying. And then I'll now actually say something that doesn't align with what they believe in, and it turns into like, this guy sucks, a stupid hat.
Oh no!
It's like, I knew it. I don't want to fall into that category where everyone agrees with what I say. It's boring.
Yeah.
It's very weird and
I think,
very sycophantic to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too that leads us to labeling, right? Like if you vote one way, if you vote this way, that means you're bad or you're stupid or you're uneducated, or if you vote this way, it's whatever. And it's like, really?
Right. It only benefits a very small group of people, and I think we need to be more aware of that, because like connections are eroding right now, especially on like a one-to-one level. People don't even know how to connect anymore. But again, I'm not going to go in my own social justice tangent.
Yeah, sure.
But another thing that I want to talk about is finances. And the first question that I got, someone said, and this was me making a video sharing my own experience, because we just moved in from an apartment complex to a house, and all of my neighbors are like, in the older generation, and they've been with their wives for 30 years, 40 years, and they're all so nice. They come up to you and like, the other day I was getting out of the car, like Caesar was crying, and this older guy and his wife came. They were just like talking, and I was like, I got a baby crying here. I need to go, man. He's like, yeah, I know, but like, welcome to the neighborhood. And he was telling me the history of the house.
Oh, wow.
But then, the baby stopped crying, and then we had a great conversation.
That's lovely.
Yeah, so I made a video on TikTok talking about that, talking about the experience of just that connection that people can have for so long, and then yet this seems like they're best friends. They were just hanging out and walking around the neighborhood. But yeah, so this first question, someone says that, unfortunately, in my generation, a large chunk of us, or a large chunk of the population here in our generation, are stuck in a partnership. They are unhappy, and simply due to economic survival circumstances. Because the video was about people staying together for 40 years, but her take was that, well, they're just together because circumstances financially.
Sure.
What do you have to say about that? Because that was very dark. Considering the video was about something loving and uplifting.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very loaded question, because I think, again, there's all different dynamics that could be at play. Is it because, there's an abuse situation and this one of the partners hasn't been allowed to establish themselves financially, and so now they're stuck? Or is it, if we live in a 2-income house, and if I take away one income, how will I support my kids half the time? And so like that doesn't seem feasible. And that's a lot of people's reality.
Right.
Or is it I've been a stay-at-home parent and my other partner works, but like I'm unhappy. How do I now establish, again, kind of the career thing? So there's a whole different gamut there.
Right.
And kind of my question would be is, okay, what's the unhappiness? Is it because you've grown apart? Is it because there's unfaithfulness? Is it because you don't feel seen? Is it because communication is broke down? There's high conflict.
Right.
Like what is happening that's creating the unhappiness? And if separation or divorce or breakup is like the direction that you want to move in, but you need to become established financially, then it's like, how do you begin shifting that for yourself?
Right.
And so it's how, like, instead of feeling stuck, are there small actions or steps that you can take to begin to change that, which again, doesn't happen overnight. And maybe part of that is like, how do I increase connection? Is there a way for us to go to couples counseling and try to figure out what is in between us and how we're feeling together? Right. And so it's like there's different things versus just kind of making a blanket statement of like, well, we're unhappy, but I am financially stuck here and I have no other option.
Right. And like so like how do you know how can people manage their finances in a relationship? Because that's also another question that I got. And you know, you've been in a relationship for 15 years, you know, and I want to hear from your own perspective. How do you guys go about that if you're comfortable? But if you have some examples just from, you know, all the counseling that you've done, maybe some people shared. And now I'm not saying to share confidential information, but just kind of like an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah, it's hard because it's a range too. Like when we started, you know, we were advised that having joint accounts were better because it just shows that you're in this for the long haul and kind of goes back to that commitment of marriage. When we initially got together, we obviously had separate accounts. And then I think early in our marriage, we had a joint, but we still kept separate. And then eventually it all kind of just merged to where we have separate business accounts, but in terms of personal, everything is all, just one names account. Are all on everything. It wasn't just also like one person's name on it and one person didn't have access. It was like, if there's an account, both have access type thing. But I know that I've had conversations with, you know, individuals and couples to where it's like, we never wanted to have joint accounts. Like we always wanted to know independently we could do this. And so again, if that's where they fall, it's like there's reasons behind that. Sometimes that's self-protection. Sometimes that allows people to be like, oh, well, I have an out. But also then it does set them up financially if there is an out later. Right. So it's really hard to say there's one right way, because I'm sure you could hear a story on all of them that it worked or it didn't.
Yeah. No, yeah. You know, since we're in the States, I think like we should set that expectation based on the divorce rate because it's 50%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, you know, even me and my partner, you know, we, you know, haven't even opened an account together because we keep talking about it, but we haven't done it. We both have our separate accounts, but I have been telling her like, okay, well, we need to open an account together eventually because, you know, we're still like in like the early stages of it. So, but as far as expenses, you know, things have just become very fluid. You know, I use her card, she use mine. It's just like, whatever is on the table, you grab it. But yeah, so I think we should, based off of the data, people should be able to prepare themselves.
Sure.
I know you said there's an out, but I'm like, hey, you know, safety is important as well.
Sure.
But like, what do you think about that as a therapist, as someone who has seen so many different examples?
I mean, I think it's hard because I think there's an argument on both sides. Like, yes, I hear that. Like, if we only have joint accounts, then what happens if we end up divorced? Like, how do you go about that? Right. Which makes sense. So if you have a separate account, you know that there's money there. But then also on the other side, if you go to all joint, then you don't have to worry about like, I wonder how much money they're spending. I wonder where they're going. And then like have all these questions, which then can create anxiety. It can create like, again, the stories that you're making up in your head, right? Buying gifts in our house doesn't really work because it's like, oh, what did you go to a golf place for? You don't golf. Oh, it's for Father's Day, right? Yeah. But I mean, it's whatever.
This is cash.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that there's me. Yeah. Well, I can see that. No, that perspective, I think is very important as well, because if you don't know what your partner is doing financially, that can create a lot of issues.
Yeah.
Especially when they're active. Then you're like, okay, I know he's eating. I know he's doing something with money.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. Well,
and
that makes sense.
I know initially too, in our first 5 years of marriage, we had a rule that if something was over a certain amount, like we would have a conversation. Like if I was going to go buy something that was over, I don't even remember the amount now because, but like if I was, let's say $1,000, it's not that I or him were asking permission, but it was like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Wanted you to be aware. Do you have any like problems with this or concerns or anything? And it was just a conversation over a certain amount. And so then it felt like it was also inclusive. So most of the time it was like, oh, cool, thanks. Or, oh, that sounds great. Or like, oh, that seems a little bit high, but like, I trust your judgment. And so, but it didn't feel like, oh, all of a sudden I now see this $1,000 charge and we're, on a budget. And I'm like, whoa, what is this? And then it comes again, going back to that attack. Right. And then financially, as businesses grew, it became less necessary. But still, it's like, please don't buy a car without me knowing. Please don't buy something without me knowing. Because again, this is a partnership. And like, also, I love buying cars, so let's do this together. But like, it was kind of this mutual respect of like, yes, whether we have joint or separate accounts, I'm going to spend my money. But also like, I want it to feel like you're a part of it. Not that just like, yeah, I bought it. Who cares what you think? Right. You know what I mean? Like there's just more ownership in it when it's together. And if someone, and sometimes like, and I didn't come as much privilege as he did. And so I had in the beginning more of a scarcity mindset versus abundance. And that grew over time. But I was like, oh, that I used to have more kind of resistance because I'm like, should you be that generous? Should you do that? Should you buy that? And not from a critique, but just from kind of fear. And he was always like, generosity is a good thing. The more generous you are, I believe the more that will come back to us, and kind of like helped teach that to me. And then also like, here's where you take risks financially and here's how you see it pay out. Mm-hmm. And so like me being willing to be open, him being willing to kind of share that, and then helped me move from that different space too. Wow.
Well, that was amazing. So I'm getting to the final aspect of this conversation, and a question that also someone posted on my TikTok was about a video that I shared, which I was talking about my experience with dating with people, me being an entrepreneur, hyper focused, always working on, always on my computer doing something, and that becoming a problem with people that I date. And a story that I just shared was which I can share now is, I was with someone for 2 weeks, and she did a nice gesture, bring me food. I was super busy. I was on my computer working, and I just grabbed the food, started eating, and that was like a no-no for her. And it turned out to be like she wanted a family where they're on the table eating, and she didn't see that with me in that moment after 2 weeks of knowing. So I shared that with my partner now, how she actually saw me in that moment, even though I was like, oh my God, that's another situation. I'm busy right now. Someone is doing a nice gesture for me to want to bring me food. But all she did was like tell me, hey, you can keep working. I just want to make sure you were eating. And she literally grabbed the chair next and just sat next to me and was curious about what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I was just yapping, explaining, and just telling her everything about it.
That's awesome.
And then this person made that comment, and I want to talk about that because I know you are an entrepreneur. Your husband is an entrepreneur.
Yep.
How do you guys go about making sure that your work doesn't overpower one another in your relationship?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. There have been times where there's been conflict where we'd be like, there was one time where we were on vacation and he did not have very good cell service on a beach, and he had a panic attack because he needed documents to go out for a closing that was happening. And I was like, bro, we're on the middle of a beach. Our children are swimming and you're freaking out because you don't have good cell service. Have some perspective. And like, I didn't offer much empathy in that moment. And was like, you do you, I'll be over here with them. We're going to have a good time because we're literally on a beach right now. He got his stuff together. He found a better signal when he walked up, probably closer to a bar, whatever. And then like the documents were sent out and it was like over in 10 minutes. And I was like, your reaction to this was way bigger than it needed to be. Yeah. But later he was like, yes, I was like struggling. You did not meet me very well in that. And I was like, I couldn't. Like, it was so hard because I was like, anyway. But so it is very hard because work, anywhere we go, is always there. Mm-hmm. And he has a very hard time shutting off, if at all, really. And so boundaries have always been further conversations. There's been times where disconnection has been easier because I'm like, oh, well, he's got his work and he's good. Right. But then I recognized that within myself. And I knew if I allowed that to sit for too long, resentment would grow. Right. And so then it comes back to like, I'm pretty understanding and flexible. But also like your kids need to know that they're a priority. And then he responded and he was like, you're right. And so then he would take times where he's not answering an email and he'd be present. And so it's just this back and forth of like, I know it's going to look different than a 9 to 5. Right. And I'm okay with that because he's building something and it's important to him. It matters to him. And then same with me. But it's communication and not allowing things to build over time was a huge, huge part of that.
No, yeah, it's like with me too. Whenever my wife calls me bro, it's usually she's very excited or she's like not happy at all. So good to know that that's a common
universal.
Thing. Universal. Yeah, because I remember one time she called me bro. I was like, whoa, what the hell? I was like, who is this, Jamal? Where do you come from? That's funny. But yeah, so I love that you guys have that. Just keeping each other accountable and then also holding space. Yeah. Even if one is like not in the right headspace or both are not in the right headspace, just to come back to the accountability aspect where you can talk to one another because that's hard. Yeah. But so how did you guys actually meet each other? Because I know as an entrepreneur, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs in my single days. We can never like even find a time to go on dates. Like I can tell that there's a connection with people in the past. This was a long eons ago, like back when humankind started. I met a few entrepreneurs, but we could not find a connection. We found a connection, but we could not just make it happen. Yeah. So how did you guys meet and then be like, all right, I want to pursue this?
Well, so we were introduced by a mutual friend, and then just hit it off really quickly. And I would honestly so our relationship went really quick. Like we met, got engaged and married all within 8 months. Mm-hmm. So it was really fast. But our first year of marriage was really tough because he was trying to build several different businesses and they all failed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need you to pick something that's going to be successful because I'm working really hard here and our bank account is draining. And then that's when I also went back to get my master's degree. But I also had to have a bigger vision. Mm-hmm. I couldn't get sucked into oh, he's a failure. This is a failure. He'll never be successful. Yeah. I saw the drive. I saw his willingness to be failure is a part of entrepreneurship. That's just real. Mm-hmm. And I knew that he came from his parents had successful things. And so I'm he has a great foundation and he has all these different qualities about him. And I have to be willing to see that versus this really hard thing in this moment. Right. And so there were a lot of conversations that first year that was this is really hard.
You know what? I have thoughts, but I'll keep it to myself. Wow.
And yeah, so just, if you're in that space, increase your willingness to be understanding, increase your willingness to be flexible, and do not let things go unsaid. Right. Not something that's mean, right? Don't say those things, but it's I was I'm this is scary. Yeah. This is nerve-wracking. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of worried. Right. And being able to say, and him, being able to say, yeah, me too. And then be really? Because I don't want you to be.
I hear you. I'm losing my shit.
But there was just continued communication and we just continued showing up for each other. And just over time, it just got easier.
Wow, that's beautiful. But especially earlier you shared that you coming from like a place of like, hey, I need to make sure I'm safe.
Yeah,
And
I
then
did.
you got thrown into a marriage early on where it's like, oh crap, what's happening right now?
Yeah, and I had a lot of abandonment stuff pop up my first year of marriage, and I had to do a lot of work on myself to be like, he's literally doing nothing wrong, and this is all internal. And so I had to figure out how to cope with that.
Wow. Well, like shout out to you. That's not easy for like, you know, to like go through all of that and I mean do all that in such a short period of time. Everything was going great, and then you're like, whoop, the stocks are falling. And then you have to be the investor that early. I guess that's the better way to put it.
Yep.
And this is very common. Like, you know, a lot of entrepreneurs, usually their partners would be their first investors. You know, even me, my wife, I call her my first investor. Whenever I'll have meetings with like, you know, like other like investors, and they're like, do you have an investor? So I'm like, yes, my wife was my first investor.
Yeah.
You know, she's a dentist, so she does really well. So yeah, she was the first investor.
Yeah.
So respect her.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're getting to the end of this. And I want to kind of like bring everything that we've talked about so far, and I think the key theme throughout the conversation is like in what I picked up is like clarity, you know, communication, and also capacity. How can you bring all those three things together as something that new couples or people that are currently in a long relationship, how can they learn from those two areas that we've talked about today?
Yeah, I think so. When we talk about the self-reflection piece is like, if there's conflict or if there's a continuing theme and there's mutual respect, go back to, okay, can I make this clear? Can I ask for something to be clear? Is there something different that needs to happen in the way that we're communicating? Right. Am I holding back with what I'm saying because I'm afraid of their response, or I'm afraid of the outcome? And it's like, okay, well, if you do that for too long, you're going to go in separate directions.
Right. Wow. Well, I think that's a great place to end this conversation. This is probably one of my most favorite conversations so far that we've done. And I know I've said that, but that's because relationship-wise, I went through so much and I had so many questions. But now to talk about that, this has been very, very enlightful. Which one is
Insightful
it?
Or enlightening?
Enlightening. So thank you again for another amazing discussion.